Welcome back, you lovely human beings. This is Imperfect Progress with your host, Hennessy, a safe space where we dive into the tools, feelings, and experiences that make a full and flawed life. Today we're talking about what it's like to seek help for mental health issues. Wherever you're at on your journey, I want to tell you that you're not alone. You are not the only one going through the confusion, hope, disappointment, strengthening, small victories, and roller coaster of healing. I don't say this to diminish your experience as general or common, but to provide some solidarity and open the door to a community of people who are all figuring it out at the same time. And today I want to share pieces of my story that can hopefully help you as you navigate the different ways to seek emotional and mental health guidance. I was very slow to embrace the reality of my mental health situation and therefore even slower to ask for help. It was easier for me to understand how I felt through the frame of spiritual battles or physical sickness. That's what made sense within my context growing up in, Christian schooling and a Christian household. And I was really stubborn even when the evidence pointed to anxiety and depression. I dealt with those up and down feelings and thoughts since I was a teenager, but it wasn't until my senior year of college that I was forced to consider that what I was really going through was maybe something different than just the physical or just the spiritual. I remember standing in the kitchen of my on-campus house, staring out the window at the parking lot. And I was stuck there, like my feet were glued to the floor and my body was frozen. I felt like someone was driving a knife into my chest, and it was really hard to breathe. Now, because I'm already a bit of a hypochondriac, I immediately assumed this was some kind of heart attack, because that's what would make the most sense for a healthy 20-year-old. So I did what any scared daughter of a nurse would do, and I called my mom, who took me to the doctor where I got an EKG, an echocardiogram, and I wore a heart monitor around for a week. Now, it turns out that my heart was perfectly healthy. When I went in for my results, the doctor asked me, "Do you feel stressed or anxious?" And of course, in my denial, I said, "No." Well, that was a lie. It was my senior year of college, for Pete's sake. I was an on-campus leader. I recently had a concussion. I volunteered at least 3 days a week. I had a full course load. I was fundraising for a summer mission trip. I had FOMO like crazy. I took a class that focused on the roots of human suffering that fed into my existential crises, and I was figuring out what student teaching was going to look like post-graduation. And more than all of those circumstantial pieces, I was just a young adult trying to figure out what it means to be who I am and an adult once I leave college. But yeah, no, I wasn't stressed at all. Absolutely no chance it could be anxiety. I joke about this now, but sometimes I wonder how my story would have turned out if I really had sought help in that moment instead of a year later when I was buried deeper in anxiety and depression to the point of contemplating ending my life. And I was scared of admitting that I was fallible. If my body was sick, it felt concrete. If my spirit was lacking something, I knew how to handle that. I knew a rule book I could consult. If my body was sick, you diagnose it, you treat it, you heal. Boom, done. But if it was my mind that was sick, it was too abstract. You can't get an MRI or a blood test and figure out what you need. Now, these were the thoughts of someone who had never struggled with serious illness of any kind, physical or mental. I know now that physical pain and sickness can take you on just as long and confusing of a journey. But for some reason, in that moment, I would have rather had a heart defect than mental health issues. Now, on top of it being abstract, I felt like if I had a mental illness, then it was my fault. I didn't trust God or the universe enough. I wasn't thinking positively enough. I wasn't praying enough. I wasn't doing enough good. I wasn't good enough. I'm supposed to love and care for others, right? I'm supposed to cast all my cares on God and find my joy in living a full life, right? And if I'm experiencing depression or anxiety, then I'm somehow doing those things wrong. I felt like I needed to fix myself. And I think those kinds of thoughts can be the biggest block to people seeking help. It's the shame and the loneliness we feel when we start to realize that we're struggling in a way we don't understand, or that we think is going to be unacceptable to the people around us, that keeps us silent. And this is true for more than just anxiety or depression, but also addiction, eating disorders, abuse, questions about our identity, and so much more. And instead of seeking help, we try to hide our pain and confusion. We don't want anyone to know, and more than that, we don't want to burden other people with the weight of our struggle. This was the biggest lie I had to, and still have to, overcome. That people who care about me would rather I suffer silently on my own because speaking my truth would be inconvenient and uncomfortable. I remember one night when my dad was picking me up from a friend who had rescued me during a very dark moment. And he said, "I hope you know you can always talk to me. I can handle anything you say. The only thing I can't deal with is you not being here anymore." Your people care. The ones who aren't equipped to help you, they care. The ones who don't understand, they care. The ones who say the wrong thing at the wrong time, they care. And that's why having access to professional resources can be so important for you and your people. I didn't know where to start once I accepted that this was unknown territory for me and my family. I started out by just going to my family doctor. They prescribed me an antidepressant and an anti-anxiety medication, all rather quickly, in and out, 20 minutes. They did their best, but it's also not their specialty. So they prescribe the most widely used medications and hope it's a fit. It wasn't for me. One of them took away my appetite, and the other made me gain weight. So I wasn't eating, I was gaining weight, I was tired all the time. I was not a picture of health. And neither one of them seemed to be helping my mind. So next, I Google therapy centers in my city because I think, oh, well, maybe it's not medicine that I need. Maybe I just need therapy. And my first match was with this very sweet 70-year-old man who I'm honestly not sure could hear me during our sessions. And I tried it for a few weeks, but it was not a good fit. So I stopped going. But I still needed help. By this time, my mom had a friend who worked in a psychiatric center who told us about a psychiatrist one town over who was the best in the area. I had no clue what it meant to go see a psychiatrist. I pictured what most people probably do, me laying on a couch while they ask you, "What do you think about that? And how do you feel?" And they tell you something you might already know about your childhood. That's not what it was like. First of all, psychiatrists, they have very full caseloads. Good, bad, or otherwise. It means that they're very busy. Your first appointment is probably going to be 40 minutes, pretty in-depth, and every appointment after that is maybe 15 minutes. It's not a deep relationship. It's clinical. It can be quick. It can be efficient. You have to be 100% honest about all of your symptoms and later about any side effects you're experiencing from medication. They have a specific set of questions and different tests that they might use to help diagnose you according to the DSM-5, which is sort of like the encyclopedia of mental health conditions. It describes each condition, its symptoms, and how many or how frequently a person shows those symptoms for the diagnosis to be a good fit. It's not a perfect system. It can be misused and overused, but for now it's what they have to work with, and it can give us a little insight into your experience. From there, the psychiatrist uses your diagnosis, family history, and medical history to prescribe a medication they think will be a good fit. Now, medication is not the path for every person, and that's okay. There are some issues with psychotropic meds. Everyone reacts to them differently. One med that works for one person might send another person over the edge. Another difficulty is that they take about 3 weeks to take full effect. And that leaves a long waiting period where you aren't sure if the medication is just getting into your system still or genuinely not working for you. Then there are the side effects. Every medication has them, and you never know which ones will hit you. It's like a Wheel of Fortune, except sucky. And you have to decide which side effects you can live with and which ones aren't worth it for you. Finding medication that helps you more than it harms you can be a long, frustrating process of trial and error. In the first 3 years of my journey, I think I tried at least 10 different med combinations. But I've been holding steady on the same regimen for the last year and a half, and holy mackerel, I never thought I would make it here, but we finally did, and I actually feel stable. Apart from finding the right medication, there's also stigma around taking medication that you have to deal with. I fought meds for a solid year. I would try one, it wouldn't work, I'd quit. Then I'd hit such a low point that I'd try another one. Maybe it worked well, so well that I thought I didn't need it anymore. So I just stopped taking it, only to plummet down again, either because I really was still experiencing symptoms or because of withdrawal. I thought taking medicine for anxiety and depression somehow made me weak or a quitter. Like I wasn't strong enough to just fix my mind and get back on track. I wasn't able to do the work, so I had to let something do it for me. I was trying to eat right, I was journaling, exercising, spending time with loved ones, had a fulfilling job, all of it. And I hated that those lifestyle choices still weren't enough for me. I had many tearful conversations with family, friends, coworkers, and therapists about this. Sometimes I still wish I could move forward without medication, and maybe one day I will. But until then, I'm going to just give thanks for this tool that helps me along the way. Because ultimately, that's what the meds are. They're tools. They are not solutions. The medication is meant to support you, lift you to a stable baseline so that you can do the daily down and dirty work of self-care and healing. Without medication, my baseline state was dropping so low that I didn't have the physical or mental resources to move forward, to even try it. But the medication is still only one tool in my box, and I need more. So, during one of those tearful conversations, my friend recommended me to a specific therapist who she thought I would work well with. We'll call her Miss G. And she was lovely. I went in person to see Miss G for a few months. She taught me things about the brain and neuroscience that still come to me this day. Like they still affect me and how I view things. Miss G listened, she encouraged me, and sometimes gave me tough love. She taught me how to use tools like EMDR and tapping, and told me that sugarcoating things to your therapist kind of ruins the point of therapy. She started teaching me to be honest with myself and others. Miss G started my lessons on acceptance and self-compassion that have carried with me throughout the rest of my therapy journey. And I remain forever grateful for her gentle spirit, her book recommendations, and all those heartfelt hugs. In-person therapy brings a special bond because presence and setting are so powerful. The therapy space is set up to reflect the type of care that they offer. The lighting, the seating, the smells, the sounds all contribute to the session. For me, the difference between the first place I walked into for therapy and Miss G's space was monumental. The first felt haphazard, chaotic, stuffy. The latter felt welcoming, calming, and reflective. Choosing a space you feel comfortable in can be part of finding the right therapist. And don't settle even if it takes a few tries to find a good fit. Once you do find a match, the time you spend and the tools you take away will be invaluable. I was in therapy bliss, you could say. But one day, Miss G told me that she would have to go on medical leave for a while and I would have an interim therapist. I was sad and honestly kind of nervous because I finally felt comfortable opening up to Miss G and she already knew my story. I didn't know if this change was going to work for me, but I trusted that she knew me well enough to find me a decent match. Enter Janelle. Check out episode 6 if you want to meet her yourself. This feisty, creative, insightful woman has been my therapist for the last 4 years. Yes, temporary turned permanent. We meet virtually, and the frequency of sessions depends on what season I'm walking through. Sometimes I need weekly meetings, and sometimes a monthly catch-up works just fine. I know I can send her a random email or text with my thoughts or feelings, and she'll read it to chat about at our next session, usually sending me a short encouragement to get me through until then. I never thought that a professional would become part of my support network, but she most certainly is. Not in the same way that my family or friends are, but she holds her own necessary role. She has the knowledge, experience, approach, and objectivity to guide me through my healing journey. She's trained in how to listen and ask questions. She knows what all the wrong things to say are, and she doesn't say them. She's 100% on your side, even when you're not on your own side, which sometimes means more tough love. Where medication supports your baseline so you can work on healing, therapy is where you continually do the work and learn tools to keep doing the work between sessions. I think that's the piece people misunderstand sometimes about therapy. They think talking about my problems isn't going to fix them. And in part, those people are right. Talking about things doesn't magically make them get better. But speaking your truth brings freedom. And speaking your truth to a trained professional brings specific knowledge, insight, and tools that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. It's not just that you sit down and talk about your life for an hour. It's the fact that you leave with a little bit more understanding and a few more skills to try out. Whatever helps or doesn't help, you get to reevaluate at your next session and keep filling your toolbox to use during your day-to-day experiences. So, we've covered a bit of therapy, a bit of medication and psychiatry, and in previous episodes we've talked about lifestyle choices, which, by the way, are also such a huge factor in healing, like drink the water, get good sleep, move your body. You've heard it all before, and as annoying as it might be to hear it again, those things genuinely do help your overall physical and mental health. Now, we're going to dive into a less familiar terrain: inpatient and outpatient psychiatric care programs. Lucky for you, I have been through different program structures at different facilities and can give you a little bit of insight about what they're like. These were definitely the pieces of professional help I was most scared of and never thought I would need. But never say never, because it turns out I did need them, and I'm actually really grateful for all that they gave me. So, accessing these types of resources starts when you are in the midst of an acute mental health crisis. And when that happens, it's recommended that you go to the nearest emergency room or emergency psychiatric center. When you admit yourself, this is a voluntary admission. This means that you weren't mandated to the program by the justice system or because of a medical emergency related to self-harm or suicide. Those are involuntary admissions. Either way, once you are admitted to an inpatient facility, you agree that you cannot leave until the treatment team clears you, which means you say, yes, I'm coming in voluntarily, but you don't get to choose when you go home. Your treatment team is made up of a psychiatrist, therapist, social worker, and the daily technicians who are on the floor with you. This all sounds very official and scary, but it's a space and system that's designed to keep you safe when you aren't sure that you can keep yourself safe. Even though I felt uncomfortable at times, especially at first, I was also grateful for the refuge I found in knowing that nothing bad could happen to me while I was there. It took away the mental load of needing to keep myself safe and hiding my struggles so as not to scare people around me. Instead, I had a set-apart time and space to feel, heal, and face everything that I was going through. In order to be admitted, you go through different questionnaires and evaluations to identify if you need immediate care or if they think you will be safe at home with your support system. Once I went in, I went home. Another time, I was admitted. It's a delicate gray scale. They'll also give you documents to read through and sign about your care and payment for care during your time there. Personally, this seems like a bad time to try and clearly discuss payment with a patient, but there isn't really an alternative. At one facility, my insurance covered nearly everything. At another, it wasn't the same story. Yes, I should have looked it up in advance during a more stable period so that I would know if the time ever came. I didn't know that. Regardless, I knew I needed the help, so in I went. From there, a nurse will take you to the intake room of your designated floor. Some facilities have different units that correspond to the type and severity of mental health conditions a person is experiencing. Other facilities place all intakes on the same floor, but may have certain restrictions of the severity of patients they will accept. I know when I was first preparing to enter my floor, I was scared because all I could picture were straitjackets and padded rooms like in scary movies. The facilities I went to were not like that at all. I met people with a wide variety of mental health conditions: anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, PTSD, addiction, borderline personality disorder, etc. I may have been scared because it was unfamiliar, but I always felt safe. The places I went were well staffed with trained professionals who made you feel safe, accepted, and human, so delightfully human. In the intake room, you go through another evaluation and a quick physical exam. The most uncomfortable part of this process for me was when they have to check that you aren't bringing anything dangerous onto the floor, which means a full body search, and I do mean full. So there have to be 2 staff members present for your own protection so that you can't be taken advantage of. And they'll also accommodate your preference, if you're a girl and you'd like to be searched by a female, or if you're a male and you'd like to be searched by a male. It was uncomfortable, for sure. But the 2 nurses I was with really did their best to keep me calm, make it quick, and maintain my dignity so that I could move on to the next steps. So after this, you get a lovely hospital gown, socks, underwear, and basics: toothbrush, deodorant, soap, etc. If you came prepared, like I did the second time that I did a voluntary admit, then you'll already have a bag of acceptable clothing and toiletries you can take with you. The first time, I didn't know this is what was going to happen, and I had to wait until my mom brought me supplies and extra clothes. And there are rules, no laces or drawstrings, nothing pointy, nothing that could be turned into something to harm yourself or others. The staff will go through your bag to double check that all the items are in compliance with their regulations before giving it to you. And if you do go to an inpatient facility, I highly recommend packing a few personal items that will help you feel more connected to home. Pictures, a blanket, your favorite sweater. While here, you're not allowed to have your phone, computer, tablet, or anything that could give you access to the internet. You are allowed to make and receive phone calls from the on-unit phones. Nice corded phones like the good old days. You give a list of approved phone numbers during your intake so that they know who's calling you. And this is again for safety in cases where there maybe was an abuse situation or something else dangerous that a patient was going through. During your time in inpatient care, there will be individual and group therapy sessions, recreational therapy with fun activities, appointments with your psychiatrist and social worker, group meals, and a lot of downtime. I read books, journaled, took showers. One facility had in-room showers and the other had a single-room shower that was for the whole floor. Just depends on where you go. Sometimes I colored. I did so many Sudoku puzzles, played cards, met other patients, and talked with the staff. Sometimes I sat in my room and cried because I missed home, or I felt lonely, or thought I would never get better. Some days, I didn't even remember why I was there, and I felt like I would go crazy with restlessness. Most of the time, I was just forced to live in the present moment and face whatever feelings were coming up. We had movie nights with popcorn and popsicles. The food wasn't terrible, not great, but better than I expected. They checked my vitals in the morning and at night. I found routines and some short-term friends who I will be long-term thankful for. I was at the lowest point in my life, but the help I was getting revolutionized how I saw my story and my struggle with mental health. I didn't feel like a victim or an outsider by the end. I felt like a survivor, like a fighter. I felt proud that I'd made it through that dark time. I was still nervous and unsure about life afterwards, but each time I went home, I felt hopeful. Now, my biggest takeaway from all of my inpatient and outpatient experiences is that when you go back home, you have to rest and work in the same ways you did while you were in care. I went home and tried to jump back into the same way I was living for everyone else at the expense of myself, and I ended up back in the same facility within 24 hours. That might be some kind of record. I don't recommend trying to break it. The second time I went home, I took a nap and ate a meal and didn't try to explain the whole process or experience to everyone I knew in one day. I faced each little moment as it came and remembered to care for me the way that my nurses and techs did. It's a little sad to me that it took hitting rock bottom and admitting myself to an inpatient care facility to feel like I had the permission, the time, the space, the energy, and support to confront mental health challenges. And part of that's my own doing for not wanting to speak up, for feeling like I was an outcast because of what I was going through. And I know we've come a long way in mental health care system. I mean, at least we are no longer shipping women off because they're hysterical. But I know there's still room to improve and grow as a system and as individuals. And I seriously applaud the people who are fighting for these changes and working toward a holistic, quality-based system that meets each person where they are and helps them understand the pros and cons of different treatments before mass diagnosis and prescription. There's even a growing field of holistic psychiatry that looks at your daily habits and routines, blood work, trauma, relationships, etc., to determine which facet might be the missing piece of the puzzle in your mental health picture, without ever even prescribing medication or labeling you with a formal diagnosis. The thing is, every person is different. Where a diagnosis might bring relief to one, it can feel like a death sentence to another. Where medication is necessary for one, it can be excessive or damaging to another. One person might need to start with therapy, one with psychiatry, one with a life coach, one with a nutritionist, and another with a completely different path. What I hope you take away today is that there's no right or wrong road of healing. There's no mental health pipeline for you to walk through and come out healed and whole on the other side. It's not a flow chart. And sadly, there aren't many well-known resources to guide you through this journey or help you know where to start. But I do recommend the Your Journey tab on NAMI's website. Link is in the description. We don't know what we don't know, and we often don't even know what we need. And that's why working with a professional can be so beneficial. If you've been hurt or dismissed by professionals along the way, I am truly sorry. It sucks to have someone tell you that your theory about your mind or your body is wrong without even checking. It sucks to be treated for a condition you might not even have. And sadly, those are potential risks of seeking help. But there are also a lot of helpful, supportive people who offer hope, healing, and community. It's risky, but I've never regretted seeking help. There's always been a lesson learned, permission to rest, and people who believe in me. One step always leads me to the next one, and I am healing, however non-linear and erratic it looks. If you ever need support along the way, there are free and accessible resources you can look into, and I'll place descriptions, phone numbers, and links in the episode details. I'm also available to chat, vent, or answer questions as needed. You can email me at imperfectprogress.pod@gmail.com, and we can set up a call if you'd like. Well, folks, I think that wraps it up for today. There is so much more detail I could give about each of these help platforms, experiences, but I hope that this overview helps you gain some perspective on what it's like to seek professional help. And remember, you beautiful people, the goal is progress, not perfection. Keep baby stepping it, my loves.